So again, the historical record shows that tariffs hurt all economies. It slows the worldwide growth. It increases inflation. It drives up prices. It actually reduces jobs. I told you that 150,000 jobs were lost in 2019 following Trump's tariffs. He had to undo some of those because they were so bad. And then there was a net loss of about 75,000 jobs in the steel industry itself. And Trump had put tariffs on steel of 25% and 10% on aluminum. It did not go well. So, tariffs are not the way to go, friends. Here's what to do. Instead of these harmful tariffs that hurt everyone, number one is you want to work toward reducing the trade barriers. Now, all of these countries that Trump talked about with his chart, which was illogical, irrational, done in a haphazard manner, it wasn't even presented in an alphabetical order or in order according to tariffs or regions or anything. It was very confusing. And I believe that was intentional to try to make people feel as though they couldn't understand tariffs. Stick with me. I'll continue to do this education. As I say, it's an area of fascination and expertise for me. So these countries already have trade agreements with the United States. In fact, they are so complex and intricate that there are different tariffs, for example, on a blouse coming into the United States than a pair of pants from the same country. There are different tariffs imposed on sugar depending on the quotas and the type of sugar and how refined it is. So the complexity of the tariffs is quite extensive. And to slap just haphazardly a 10% across the board doesn't make sense. These agreements were hammered out over months, in some cases years, by individuals that were quite sophisticated and adept at doing this. So it is very troubling to me, number one, that Trump is violating these agreements that are already in place. If you wanted to renegotiate these, then you can dispatch your diplomats and your trade experts to renegotiate them. What's wrong with that? This bloviating showmanship really looks very just juvenile and second rate. It is not presidential in my mind. So working toward reducing trade barriers benefits everyone. And that is step number one. Step number two is to reduce income taxes across the board. Not just corporate taxes, which I will put as number three. We need to reduce corporate taxes so that the companies then have more money so they can reinvest in their company. They can grow, they can hire more people, they can engage in research and development, they can come out with better products, more competitive products at a price that people are willing to pay and that they are willing to sell it for. That is how the economy works. But these corporate taxes need to be reduced so that companies have enough to actually reinvest and help the economy grow, including manufacturing companies. Now, when we talk about personal income taxes, that's very important as well. Think about it. You may be in a tax bracket where 50% of your money is going to the federal and the state government combined. Maybe you're like me and you're a small business owner, right? The Healthy American is a business. I'm taxed on my personal income. I'm taxed federal. I've got to pay federal taxes on my personal income. So I have state taxes, I have federal taxes. And then on the business, I pay corporate taxes. So I am taxed 3 times on the money that I make. If I'm lucky, I'm keeping 50 cents out of every dollar. Imagine if I was able to keep 60 cents or 75 cents or 80 cents. I could expand the Healthy American. I could hire researchers. I could hire editors. I could have all those fancy graphics. I could have a lot more of my content, although you're telling me that I am providing quite a bit. And that's because I am dedicated to the truth. I am here at your service. I am in service to the good Lord above and to bringing you the truth and information and encouragement so that we can stand up against these deceivers and those who are trying to tyrannize and oppress us. But think about if you had more money in your pocket that you earned, whether that is from income from a job, maybe you own an apartment, maybe you are renting out an income earning property and maybe you are selling something on Etsy, and wouldn't it be awesome if you were able to keep more of that money, if you were able to keep more of your Social Security check, of what you get from your investments? If you had more money, what would you do with it? Would you just keep it in the bank? Most people would spend it. They would go on vacation. They might buy a different car. They might remodel their kitchen. They might donate to charity. Charities are completely hit by these tariffs because people are going to have less money. And most people will donate to charity when they have a little bit left over, or their charitable contributions start to shrink because it was money now that they have to use to pay for their own food and gasoline. So reducing income taxes, in my view, is the number, and not just my view, but economically speaking, is a wonderful driver of the economy. Then people want to buy more things. There can be more manufacturing and all those factories that Trump wants to bring back. That's an important way of doing it. So working toward reduced trade barriers, reducing personal income taxes, reducing corporate income taxes. And the next one I think is one of the most important that has nothing to do with tariffs, and that is decreasing regulations. Regulations strangle manufacturing in this country. Stay tuned. I will have a video for you where I'm going to do a deep dive all about these carbon capture and carbon tariffs that I hope Trump is going to do away with, and the EPA and so many other regulatory agencies make it so prohibitively expensive to do business manufacturing in the United States. Not just expensive, but difficult. There are companies that have regulatory compliance departments. They have to hire people and pay them to keep on top of all of the paperwork that the government requires. Now, later, I want to bring my husband on. We're going to have a conversation because he is a little bit more like some people saying, well, I don't know what's so wrong with tariffs. And then we start having the conversation and he's like, oh, you know what? I really know where you're coming from. He's going to talk about working in a manufacturing. It's not so much we're going to talk about how it evolved from manufacturing to production to services, because that's the hallmark of an advanced economy and a well-established, thriving economy. The United States, #1 wealthiest country in the world. Nothing was broke that had to be fixed by throwing a bomb on the country. You want to fix a few things in these intricate trade deals, go about it with diplomacy and expertise, thoughtfully, intelligently, not like a bully, not like a mafia Don boss that is trying to enter into some kind of protection racket. It just doesn't suit us as Americans. All right. So promoting the reduction of trade barriers, reducing personal income taxes, reducing corporate income taxes, decreasing regulations. Now, there's also something called 100% bonus depreciation. That is an accounting maneuver and a law that is going to be sunsetted out unless the Congress votes to keep these tax cuts. And that allowed a company to basically write off 100% depreciation on certain things in the first year, which meant instead of waiting and depreciating it over 20 years or more, they could use that money again to invest back into their company, hire more people, reducing unemployment, increasing wages. So that is a step in the right direction. Now, the government could offer certain incentives to certain industries, and that is done in other countries. So that definitely could be done. It could be done at a local level. It could be done at a city, a county, a statewide level. If the state wants to offer some deferred taxes or some kind of favorable incentives to certain manufacturers that want to set up shop in that state, I'm all for it. None of that includes these harmful, destructive, disastrous, terrible tariffs. There could be a reduction in payroll taxes. There are other incentives. These are the most important ones that come to mind. These actually drive economic activity. They increase wages, they add more jobs, and they result in more productivity and a higher standard of living for the most people in the most countries. Why ignore these tried and true strategies? That's pretty funny how I said that. Why ignore these tried and true strategies for the strange, bizarre whack-a-mole of tariffs that only harm everyone involved, as history clearly shows. All right, friends, I hope that I could clear that up for you. I will continue to share information about tariffs, and I thank you for increasing your knowledge and keeping an open mind and looking at history and the facts and the data so that we can make sure that we don't have the wool pulled over our eyes and we can read between the lies. And I will cover all of this for you in my Substack over at peggyhall.substack.com. See you soon, everybody.